Hi, I'm Josh Kopel, a Michelin-rated restaurateur and the president of the California Restaurant Association's Los Angeles chapter. Today, in partnership with Yelp for Restaurants, we're presenting the Restaurant Industry Town Hall with celebrity chef Tim Hollingsworth. Together, we'll unpack the tactics, tools, and strategies he's used to create a blockbuster restaurant in front of a live audience. Don't hesitate to ask, because this is about us all, getting better and building community.
People want a story. People want you to tell a story, whether that's through your food, through your service, how you designed it, and stuff like that.
So tonight, Odium talking to Chef Tim Hollingsworth.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
So the first question I have for you is about marketing. So marketing for, I think, most restaurateurs is on the back burner. It's always something that you do when you have enough time. It's always an afterthought. But you created an epic trailer for this restaurant before it was even built. Marketing has always been in the forefront of your mind, and it's always been front and center in all of your campaigns. And I'm curious to know, what was the marketing strategy when opening this? And then how has your marketing strategy evolved post-pandemic?
Yeah, I definitely think that marketing is very important. It's very important. I feel like it's necessary these days. I feel like you can't really open a restaurant without doing that these days. I think that we're in a crazy saturated market like Los Angeles. You have to make yourself stand out in some sort of way. So we did a couple different videos when we first launched, just to sort of raise, just to build up the anticipation of opening the restaurant. I was not from LA, so I was from up north, moved down to LA. I have been here for a couple of years before we actually opened a restaurant, which I'm very, very thankful for, that it took me time to open up the restaurant. So I got to know the city a little bit. I got to know different people in the city a little bit, because it's very different than Northern California, and the purveyors are very different. The clientele is very different. What people eat is very different. So it was, I definitely learned a lot in that process. Now that I had the chance to open up the restaurant, spend 5 years running the restaurant, and then close down, 13 months, reopen the restaurant, I feel like, okay, I've been in the city a little bit. I think I understand our clientele. I understand Los Angeles a little bit more. So, when we recreated the menu, and now we're, our focus on marketing is telling the story of the different types of food that we have now in a creative way. Constantly trying to think of different and creative ways to approach the situation. It's okay, a lot of things have been done. What can we do that's a little bit different than maybe somebody else is doing in a restaurant?
Well, and it's such a stark change from, I think, what you see out there normally, which is a photo of a piece of pie on Instagram with a caption that says, "Come to my restaurant."
People want a story. People want you to tell a story, whether that's through your food, through your service, through the dishes and how you designed it and stuff like that. They don't really, they believe in it more when they understand and they hear the story, and it intrigues them more. Like I said, there's a lot of restaurants to go out to eat. We're here on Bunker Hill. I think it's one of the most beautiful locations in Los Angeles, but it's a ghost town up here. There's not a lot of foot traffic up here with the museums, partially open, limited capacity, all the offices dead, all the, different theaters and stuff like that. None of them we have a few shows, but not like normal. So, it's really important to be telling that story to drive traffic, in my opinion.
Well, and I want to talk about the restaurant specifically, because it's a big restaurant.
It is. Very big restaurant.
Which usually means a big note or a big lease rate, which creates big stress.
Yes.
I owned a restaurant that was 6,000 square feet down the street, and my note was $21,000 a month.
Yeah.
It certainly frames the lens through which you look at everything. And post-pandemic, people are beginning to rethink square footage, and I'm curious to know, do you still see the size of this restaurant as an asset, or do you see it as an expense?
I've seen it as not necessarily an expense, but it's different. Tonight we'll do 200 covers, right? 200 covers. and the restaurant will feel slow. You know what I mean? And that's what I feel. And that's what I don't love about the restaurant, because the restaurant, a lot of it is, yes, it's the food you go for, right? And it's the service that you come back for. And it's the environment and the hospitality and everything around it, meaning the music, you know, every part of it. And that energy that you can create and build in a room is amazing. But if it's off, then it's, so like I'm always thinking about like, oh, what's the music art we're playing? You know, the lighting situation, how are we seating people? And truthfully, I'm never happy with it.
Let's talk about millennials. Right? Because that's what we're talking about.
What is the cutoff? What's the cutoff? 1980, right?
Yeah, you are a millennial.
I'm a millennial. I was born in 1980.
You're like a millennial cusp.
Trust me, I'm not a millennial.
Right? But I think you bring up a really valid point, which is that the values of our workforce aren't really the traditional values of the industry. You know, like when I came up in the industry, like you worked hard. Like that's what you did. I so vividly remember this moment that my GM was having a conversation with me, and he was like, yo man, like I can't take this anymore. I worked like 65 hours this week. And literally as the words came out of his mouth, my business partner and executive chef rounded the corner and said, I remember my first part-time job. Like just nailed it. You know, and like that's how we came up, you know, and there's a sense of pride in working 80 to 100 hours a week. And so without making a judgment call as to whether that's healthy or whether we're all psychopaths, we've got, you know, are people going to bend to our ways, or how do you cater to people that have a different value system than the industry that we came up in?
First of all, I think that there are still people that have that desire. I get people all the time that are coming, can I stage at the restaurant? Can I do this? Can I do that? And yeah, they're coming to work, they want to come and work for free or whatever, and that doesn't mean that they want to work long hours necessarily, but like the answer is always no. It's a liability. No, you can't come stage here. You can come try out for a job if you like, you know, and half the people that want to come try out for a job still want to get paid, you know? So it's a difficult thing, but I think that it's how society has shifted as a whole. And it makes more balanced people, sure. But I mean, I grew up in a rough way, in a rough environment, physically working, you know, and I think that a lot of people thrived in that situation, but there were a lot of talented people that can still take names today that have restaurants in America that did not thrive in that environment and did not do well, and you know, are extremely talented. So just because they can't make it in that environment doesn't mean. So I think that truthfully, I think there's just a lot of different personalities out there. Some people are gonna need to be pushed like that. Some people need a little bit more space. Some people, you know, it's like, and now we have to treat people totally fair and equal, but we have to like, you know, pay attention to their different, you know, positives and negatives. I have three kids at home. Every one of them have different personalities, right? Can't talk to my son the same way I talk to my daughter, because my daughter might, you know, cry about this, and my son might, you know, get upset about that, or whatever it is, or you know, my daughter's excited about this. They're just different. They're different people, and I think that process has actually taught me even more in dealing with people.
What are you doing to lure talent?
I think it's the same thing. It's telling the story, you know, it's making people, I think it's imperative to make people believe in the process, teach people why you're doing something. That I always got in trouble as a kid because I always said, why am I doing this? Why, you know, and I'm curious, like, you know, why do you make a vinaigrette this way? Why do you add this before you add that? Like, you know, I was genuinely curious. Sometimes that got me in trouble. But I felt that I learned more because I asked all of these questions. And I think, you know, I think it's just making sure that the curious people that are working around in the environment understand what we're going for. I mean, the cooks that we have in the kitchen today, not today, but like right when we first reopened, every single cook was from before. Every single one of them. And we were literally closed for 13 months. And that's like, wow. how are we able to get these people back? I don't think we could have opened a restaurant if we didn't have them, because we weren't getting any new applicants. That was really, really difficult. So I'm very, very thankful for the team that we have. They're a young team. A lot of them are directly out of Culinary Institute. And so it's just, getting them in here and teaching them the process and getting them to believe in what they're doing and I think creating a fun environment for them to work in too. Still serious, but fun. And then just the way that Odium's built and the interaction, there's less divide between the dining room and the kitchen. And culturally, I think it's the same thing, just because it's you walk into the back of the house of the restaurant, there's no place for a server to go hide or whatever, unless they're literally in the dish station. Other than that, you're pretty much out in the open. So, when they're not on the floor, they kind of tend to come to the kitchen, and that's kind of the area. So, they interact with the chefs and stuff like that. And I think, we have family meal, everybody kind of sits together. We don't really define where people sit, but culturally, I think it's important to create that family type of environment for them.
Let's talk about Odium 2.0. So you shut down the restaurant and then you decided to start from scratch, which you had a winning recipe before. So I'm curious to know, what prompted the idea to just start all over again?
I mean, I don't know if you guys are like me, you become unhappy with certain things, right? And as the restaurant grows and continues to grow and you continue to grow, it kind of is just, it's its own living thing that has evolved into what it evolves into. And it's difficult to go back and make big shifts, right? So yes, I wanted to restructure the menu and do different things, but I was like, what are we gonna do? Take the menu, throw it in the garbage, and then, work on a brand new menu, and including layout and formatting and all that kind of stuff, which was the answer was yes, actually. That's what we were going to do. We were literally, I was talking with people in design and being like, okay, creatively, how can we restructure our menu and format it differently? I think I want to I don't want to do a long running list of a menu anymore. I wanted to have a little bit sections, clear design for everybody, because I feel that it's more approachable for people and people understand it more. So all of those decisions were already in my head, but having closed down for 13 months, I really felt it as oh, this is a no-brainer. I legit have the opportunity to rebuild the restaurant at this point. And it was, it wasn't okay, let's go and open up the same thing. It was let's go and open up, let's R&D, spend a few weeks R&Ding a brand new menu, and let's go for it. And that process is fun. The cooks, thrive in that. Then that means, what does that mean? That means all the new servers and everybody, we go through the menu tasting and spend weeks training them on that. And it was a unique opportunity, and I think we're very fortunate to be able to have done it. And yes, it was a completely negative thing that had to happen, but ultimately it's how do we find the positives in it? And that was my way of finding the positive.
Well, and I think something that came out of it for a lot of restaurateurs is this idea of thinking small. Right? Smaller menus, smaller staffs, fewer hours of operation.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, how did that work out for you? Did you reimagine the entire construct of the restaurant? And if so, what were the benefits to thinking smaller?
So smaller, we decided smaller services because we don't have staff, right? And then so we are dinner only 5 days a week versus 13 services a week, which was a huge thing for us. And then, when we opened for lunch for a couple of weeks. We did 2 weeks of lunch, and then we opened for dinner right behind that. And then we opened for brunch right behind that. And we were extremely busy, very, very, very busy, and kind of had this life of its own. And now, operating at a restaurant 5 days dinner only, yes, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's a lot easier than operating a restaurant 13 services. Or more. So, it was because of that I could always be here for every service. I could and not like run myself into the ground. I can be very hands-on with every aspect of everything because it was much more manageable. So, because of those things, that's exciting to me. Yes, we want to open up for more services. We're thinking, okay, revenue-wise, how do we, what makes the most sense to build the next step in revenue? Okay, opening on another dinner service would be great. Opening Saturday and Sunday brunches will be good. Potentially lunches down the road and getting back in full swing of everything, but it's going to take time. We're in the process of writing the budget for next year. We don't have lunches until the fourth quarter of next year. We don't have them in our budget yet because I just don't know.
So you write a budget, huh? Wow. We'll have to talk about that after. It brings me to my next point, which is that there are tons of busy restaurants out there, but not every restaurant is profitable.
Yeah.
There are many busy restaurants that aren't profitable at all. And so how do you make sure that this restaurant is profitable? What are you tracking? What are your targets?
I mostly pay attention to labor costs and food costs because those are the big things. And beyond that, yeah, we pay attention to them percentage-wise, dollar amounts and stuff like that. But I think it's just trying to run it sort of intelligently, but I'm not detail-oriented on a numbers basis. I'm decent with numbers. I'm good with numbers and I'm good head on my shoulders. I'm like, common sense is like, I have a lot of common sense, I think, I hope. When I look around, when I see different things, I'm able to make those adjustments in those calls. But I spent a lot of time working with people that were very good at numbers. So I had a buddy that was working for another company at the same time. And I brought him in and I said, okay, let's run the labor, let's look at it. And then we really wrote a schedule that fit to our budgeted dollar amounts, and we stuck with that schedule.
Did you have to adjust the menu for that?
No, our menu gets adjusted by sort of them. Every person has a specific number of dishes, and that changes. It's not like a hard rule, but we removed one person from the line when we reopened. We don't have the raw bar anymore, so we kind of combined everything. We couldn't find somebody to do the raw bar, so we combined that into the hotline or the hub of the kitchen. I can understand if it's hard for the cooks or if they can execute it. So when we first wrote the menu and then we went through the first maybe couple days, then I was like, okay, let me see the menu. Cross off, cross off, cross off, cross off, cross off, cross off. Probably cross off like 6 items. And I was like, hey, these ones are retired, and we can't handle it. We can't pick up this amount of food. We couldn't do it. We changed when we reopened. We changed our POS system as well. We went from Aloha to Toast, which was a huge learning curve for us. We don't have printed tickets anymore. We have screens now. So we're trying to evolve with the times a little bit, and but that's like a learning curve in the process. I think now it makes us better, but there was a time when I said, okay, no more screens. And I think when I had COVID, they brought the screens back. The team brought the screens back, and I was like, I knew there was always the plan to bring them back, but as like we can't handle it right now. Like this is not the time to learn. Let's understand what we're doing first and get in the swing of things, and then let's figure out how we're expoing. And then it's like one person had tickets, then there was another screen. We had 3 expediters on Saturday nights. It's like it gets busy.
Yeah.
We get hit hard because we get a lot of pre-theater when that comes in. So we'll do we can do 150 in an hour and a half.
Was work-life balance part of Odium 2.0? Were you like, I'm never working 100 hours again, it's 90 hours from here on out?
Work-life balance was really important for me after leaving the French Laundry. And I think it's a constant, I'm still trying to achieve it. But I think it's in a much better place. I think it's, the way that I like to think about work-life balance is just the way I like to justify it, I guess, is I love what I do. So even if I'm at home, I'm probably going to cook something. So you know what I mean? It's like whatever's work, and I'm probably gonna write a recipe for it. I'm probably gonna shoot it and put it on Instagram. I'm probably, it's like it's this constant, like every single aspect of my life is like towards a goal or around, surrounded by what we're doing here.
You're a successful chef and restaurateur that's worked for other successful chefs and restaurateurs. So like, if there was a formula for success in the restaurant industry, what would that look like?
I mean, I think there's key positions in a restaurant. You have to hire those key positions because the people that work for you are, they're the ambassadors for you. And if your general manager and your chef are, not working together, they don't, there's no vibe between the two, they're fighting, or they don't believe in the process, then I think you're in trouble. So I think number one, it comes from the core team of the restaurant and creating a really, really strong core team. And then that team being able to sort of, everything trickles down and spreads out a little bit. So I think number one is your team. Number two, you gotta be really happy with your product. And I think in these days, you kind of need to be specific about what your product is. There needs to be a story or a point of view. You see a lot of restaurants open up without a point of view sometimes, and they close down. And I think a lot of the reason is because there's just a lot of options. So if you don't really understand where you're going, and we struggle with that with our menu before, I feel like, it was very, I was like, oh, it's American. Like if you ask me, what is Odeum, what's the food? I'll probably talk to you for like, I'll probably like just, I don't have like a phrase that's like a short specific phrase that's like, oh yeah, go to Odeum because it's an Italian restaurant. You can get pizza and pasta. Like it's different. It's different than that. So I think being able to articulate what you're actually doing is really, really important as well. And then beyond that, I mean, if you don't have, I think it's business. You need to understand business in order to understand, in order to stay open. Because if you over budget, if you think, oh yeah, this restaurant's going to blow it out of the water, it's like going to be extremely successful, I write my budgets way low, way low. We were supposed to do $8 million. That's what we were supposed to do, and we did $10 million our first year. And you're writing a budget and it's a blank piece of paper or whatever, but it's like I wanted to make sure that in the labor numbers and all those things that I wrote were on the $8 million. So when we were able to execute, things started to make sense, and thank God people came in the door. But we were profitable month one, literally month one. We were turning a profit, which is something that I pride myself on. Would I do it the same way again? Probably not. It was too fast, but it was very important to me at that time to be successful because the restaurant group that I was a part of had a lot of restaurants that weren't successful for, a year or whatever, and they're sort of getting underwritten a little bit.
Who's doing it right? Who are the restaurateurs you look to for inspiration?
I think it depends on kind of the departments that they're in, but I mean, obviously Thomas Keller is a guy that I have a lot of respect for. Daniel Boulou is a close friend, and he's a person I have a lot of respect for. Wolfgang Puck, I think he's built an incredible empire and been able to do that. I think John and Vinny and those guys, really understand their business and what they're doing. I think that there's a lot of really talented people in Los Angeles and in America, cooking food these days and making beautiful experiences in restaurants. There's a lot of people.
Where do you go to learn? Like when you want to be a better chef or a better restaurateur, what resources do you use to level up?
I think I struggle with that sometimes, to be honest with you. Like there's certain aspects of what I do that I'm like, man, I really love to like kind of go back and study and relearn this kind of thing. But I'm like 41 years old, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm too old, or I'm this caliber of chef. Like, is it weird for me to go and like stage in a restaurant and like get inspired or whatever? But I think, where do I specifically go? Constantly reading, constantly looking things up, Googling and searching things, and then traveling. I think the traveling is the biggest thing where I get inspired, and going out to other people's restaurants.
That was huge for me. I lived in my restaurant, so I didn't go to any other restaurants ever. And the first restaurant I ever worked in was the one that I owned. So I had no experience in a gutter palate, which is a terrible combination. But everything I learned about running restaurants, I learned from going to other people's restaurants.
Yeah.
As it turns out, it's a great way to learn.
It is a good way to learn. You see what to do, what isn't working. You understand how your experience is at that restaurant. If you're like me, you're looking around at everybody else and sort of, I love going to other people's restaurants. I love just seeing how other people do things, truthfully, and seeing if there's any good ideas in there, and getting inspired. I get inspired. Could be a flavor combination. I have Wagyu sitting in the fridge downstairs. Somebody sent it to me from Japan, and I'm like, hey, what am I gonna do with this Wagyu? And I'm trying to think about, I've done a lot of Wagyu before, and I have a lot of experience with it, but I want to do something different. What do? I ordered takeout the other day, and I had shaky beef from Blossom. I'm like, oh, what would be really good? What if I take the yuzu and I, replace that with this, and then get inspired by that? And it's like now I'm literally getting inspired by a takeout meal that I have with my family for, one of the most expensive items that'll go on to my menu, and I think that's cool.
For sure.
I love that.
I want to open it up. Does anyone else have questions for the chef?
So curious what you, not to attribute everything to the pandemic, because we live in this universe that gifted us this pandemic to make everything really horribly hard, but what did you learn about yourself in the last couple years?
I feel like I'm learning. I think when you have time off, the only other time in life that I've had time off like this is when I left the French Laundry. So when I left the French Laundry, I took I did consulting or whatever, but it wasn't it's like a part-time job, right? It wasn't really working a lot of hours or anything like that. I had ample time off then, and I had a lot of time off. Yes, I was still working and doing different things, but it wasn't directly related to any of my restaurants. So what did I learn about myself? I learned what's important to me. Right? My family is very important to me. The people around me are very important to me. The relationships that I have are very important to me. I learned through, rethinking about what a restaurant is and how I'm gonna reopen Odium and how hard that's going to be and how I need to provide for my family, and thinking about okay, well, what does that mean? If I'm gonna open up other restaurants, what do they need to be? Well, maybe you open up a concept and then you open up multiple of those concepts and it's a little easier, So just different things like that. I'm learning that you don't necessarily have to go out there and do the best that you can at something. You can go out there and do something that's really, really good and that you're very proud of, that is able to scale and provide for people and hit people on a different level. And not to really care about what other people think to a certain extent. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of writers out there going to tell you this, that about your food, about, what their experience here. And I think it's not listening to that and understanding that it doesn't matter if this group of people like you or that group of people like you. Do something that you're proud of, that you think speaks to the people that are around in that. Number one thing about a restaurant, which is kind of, that whether or not you would think it seeing at the restaurant, but I thought very, very, very much about the community around here. I thought about the people that live next door in the building and them coming down. We have a guy named Zach. He might be here tonight. He literally comes in here 4 times a week. And it's important for me that guy can come down here, get a roast chicken and a beer or whatever he wants for that evening, or bring in a group of friends and entertain them. People from the museum, people that are going to theater, people that are traveling internationally. It's the restaurant is for the community, and I hope to really keep that as a focal point.
How do you, in the early days of the sort of the dating to find the people to do the life's work with, really be able to assess partners or collaborators' trustworthiness?
That's a tough one. I still don't think I figured that out, truthfully. I'm a chef by trade. All I did is put my head down and work in the kitchen. And yes, I paid attention to service and how things, how to run a restaurant to a certain extent, but like I'm very, very much a chef, which means that I worked a lot of hours at trying to perfect a specific skill. And I think finding people, your question was finding
people who are trustworthy.
Trustworthy, yeah. I think that finding people throughout your time in your career, I was very lucky. I worked at the French Laundry, so there's a lot of really talented people that went through there. My chef de cuisine is someone that worked with me at the French Laundry for many years. So I worked with him for like 14 years. I'm very, very thankful to have him in the kitchen because I can have a conversation with him and he knows exactly what I'm saying. I can talk about a specific dish and I can be like, this is what I want you to do, reference points, and he's gonna put up a plate that is within what I think is acceptable, and I can go back and I can tweak it to what I want. And a lot of times it might be, spot on from the first time. Why? Because I've worked so long with the guy and we're very, very close. So I'm really, really lucky. But as far as like business partners and all that kind of stuff, I think, I don't think I'm the person to ask. Truthfully, I've had a lot of rough relationships. I really have, and I didn't learn. Working at the French Laundry, you don't learn business. No one's teaching you business there at all. You're trying to be the best. That's it. But no one's teaching you business. Like the numbers just make sense on that scale. If you can imagine the check average and you can imagine like the overhead and stuff like that, the numbers make sense. And you don't really have to focus. I remember Thomas Keller coming up to me at one point and being like, hey, your food cost needs to be higher. To be a good judge of character is like the number one thing. And if you have people around you that support you, that are also good judge of characters, and you collaborate with them, you kind of ask, what do you think of this person? So I involve people in decisions to try to make sure that I'm making the correct decision. At the end of the day, I make the decision, but I'm involving other people in that process to get feedback.
You trained and came up in one of the best restaurants in the world, under one of the best chefs in the world. And then you moved from that market, which is a very well pedigreed fine dining market, one of the best in the world, to Los Angeles, which is not known necessarily for its fine dining. No 3-star Michelin restaurants, only a handful of 2-star Michelin restaurants. Michelin wasn't even here for 10 years up until 2019. So kind of tells you what that body thinks of this marketplace as a fine dining destination. Yeah. For sure. What do you think are the key differences between a place like Napa Valley and Los Angeles, and what do you see as the future of fine dining in this market?
I think this market will always be casual. I think there'll be sort of ebbs and flows where people will be, intrigued about going to those special experience places like Vespertine. You have your older, more old school. You have your Spagos, you have your Providence, you have Melise. These types of restaurants that are fine dining, but like a little bit more traditional and have been around, been in the city for a long time. But truthfully, I think the people in LA are just more casual, and they want to go out to a more casual experience. Doesn't mean they want less quality food, more casual experience. There's a lot of options to what to do afterwards. You go to San Francisco, you want to talk about where you want to go out afterwards. I don't know. I lived there for a long time too. I don't know. We can go to a bar. Like I know bars, whatever. Napa is even worse. One bar, Ponchos, that's it. But there's literally, I think that's the big thing, that people have other things to do outside of just eating. And so I don't think that, if I was going to open up a 3 Michelin star restaurant, ambitious kind of deal, I think that, it would be very, very small and controlled, because I don't think that a lot of people are going to go. I don't think you can get the same number of people at French Laundry getting on a daily basis here in LA, which is crazy, because in Napa, everybody there, it's by destination, and here you have all those people. But what I've noticed, people don't come here. Yes, we get people that buy big bottles of wine or whatever. In Napa, people bought big bottles of wine. You go to New York, people are buying big bottles of wine for lunch. Here in LA, they don't do that as much. And I think that those people that would do that or can do that are going outside of the city. They're traveling to New York and they're creating that experience. They're going to Vegas, or they're going to other markets, and they're having that experience.
well established, well seasoned. What is your take on what the immigrant populace and undocumented sector mean for our industry presently and well into the future? What's your opinion and what's your take on that?
I just think that if America is built on so many different cultures, and I'm not from here. My parents aren't from here. My grandparents aren't from here. We all moved here to this country, and I think that it's important that process sort of continues to happen, because that is what makes America America, and what makes it a great country. In the sense is that it's just so many different people, so many different types of people in one spot that move here for a specific reason. And I think that opportunity is important.
And I commend you for saying that, Chef. Thank you for honoring that, man.
It's really
Respect.
important, really important.
All right, let's hang out. Let's just eat, drink, and be merry.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chef.